Have you ever noticed something? You're in the middle of a conversation. Everyone's laughing at the same thing, agreeing with the same ideas, but your mind is already thinking 3 steps ahead. You nod, you smile. From the outside, everything looks normal, but inside, there's a completely different conversation happening. One that only you can hear. Or maybe someone has looked at you and said, "Why do you think about everything so much?" And you just smile. Because explaining it is hard, really hard. Or maybe you achieve something real, something significant. And the first thing you feel isn't excitement, it isn't pride. It's fear, the fear that people are about to realize. You're not actually as capable as they think you are. And if you've seen yourself in even one of those moments, then you're not alone. And this isn't just being sensitive. It's not just overthinking. It's a very specific pattern. A pattern found in people who tend to notice more, feel more, understand more. Today, we're going to explore the 3 faces of that pattern. 3 different people, 3 different struggles, and one truth connecting all of them. A truth that might be yours too. Meet Alex. Alex is 24 years old, a graduate student in Chicago, smart, hardworking, the kind of person who seems to have an answer for almost every question. In class, he's probably the one who studies more than anyone else. But the night before every exam, Alex can't sleep. Not because he didn't study, not because he isn't prepared. He can't sleep because his mind refuses to stop. At 11 p.m., what if I forget everything? At 1 a.m., what if I walk into the exam and my mind goes completely blank? At 3 a.m., what if this one exam changes the entire course of my life? By then, he's already thought through every possible outcome. The good ones, the bad ones, and the ones that will probably never happen at all. By morning, he's completely exhausted. Not from studying, from thinking. Have you ever felt that? Like you've worked incredibly hard inside your own mind, and somehow still feel like you've accomplished nothing. That's what happens when someone like Alex spends every day trapped in overthinking. So what's actually happening inside his mind? At its core, Alex's nervous system is reacting to uncertainty. And the nervous system has one primary goal: maintain control. So it creates a simple rule. If I think through every possible outcome, nothing can catch me by surprise. On the surface, that sounds reasonable, but that's exactly where the problem begins. Because eventually, the mind stops solving the problem and starts replaying it. Imagine Alex's mind as a hamster wheel, running at full speed, working endlessly, burning energy, but never actually moving forward. And the worst part? The brain starts confusing motion with progress. Alex spends the entire night thinking. It feels productive, but it isn't. He's not making progress. He's just getting tired. Neuroscience offers a surprisingly clear explanation for this. When we overthink, certain systems in the brain keep recycling the same signals again and again. A small uncertainty begins to feel like an emergency. And once that loop starts, even moments that should feel restful become difficult to escape. Slowly, the effects begin to spread into every area of Alex's life. He starts imagining extreme worst-case scenarios, failing multiple exams, destroying his future, losing his career before it even begins. He starts avoiding situations that might trigger those thoughts. And for temporary relief, he keeps asking the same questions over and over, even when he already knows the answers. The strange part, Alex thinks this constant mental activity is proof that he's intelligent, but that same activity has quietly become one of his biggest weaknesses. And the damage doesn't stop with sleep. His anxiety grows. Emotional exhaustion starts building. His confidence begins to crack. Concentration becomes harder. Memory suffers. Even simple decisions start feeling overwhelming. 2 weeks later, same exam week, same night, but this time, Alex does something different. The spiral begins. The familiar thoughts start showing up, but instead of following them, he reaches for a notebook and writes a single sentence. This is just overthinking. It's not solving anything. Then he closes the notebook. The thoughts don't disappear, but something changes. They lose some of their power, because Alex gave them a name, and once you name something, you create distance from it. And in that distance, for the first time, the wheel begins to slow down, maybe even stop. The most important thing to understand is this. The goal is not to eliminate overthinking completely. The goal is to stop mistaking repetition for progress. Everything starts with awareness. Gently remind yourself, this is overthinking, not problem solving. That single realization creates the first crack in the cycle. Write your thoughts down. Get them out of your head and onto paper, because thoughts trapped inside the mind tend to keep circling. Thoughts placed in front of you become easier to see clearly, and when your mind feels overwhelmed, return to your senses. Notice 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear. Simple, but powerful, because it pulls your attention away from imagined futures and back into the present moment. Now think about this. You're at a party. Good music, good people. Everyone seems to be having a great time. You're laughing at the right moments, nodding along to the conversations. From the outside, Everything looks completely normal. But inside something else is happening. Like there's a background process running somewhere in the back of your mind. A deeper question that nobody asked. A thought that you keep editing over and over before saying it out loud. And when the party ends, when you're driving home, that's when you feel it. That strange emptiness. Not sadness, not exhaustion. Just the feeling that nobody actually saw you. You spent 4 hours surrounded by people, yet somehow it feels like you would have been less lonely if you'd stayed home alone. Have you ever felt more alone in a crowd than you do by yourself? There's a reason for that. And surprisingly, it isn't because of other people. There's a name for this feeling: intellectual loneliness. And it doesn't come from a lack of social interaction. It comes from the pain of being surrounded by people, while feeling fundamentally misunderstood. So how does this happen? Deep thinkers process information differently. Before accepting an idea, they instinctively look for causality, the reason behind it, the connection beneath it, the deeper meaning hiding underneath it. Most conversations, however, revolve around practical concerns or immediate emotional relevance. Neither approach is wrong. It's simply a mismatch. But the real problem begins when deep thinkers repeatedly enter social environments and repeatedly receive the same message. Their ideas get reduced to simple opinions, where they're told, "You're overthinking it," again and again and again. So eventually, they learn. Keep it shorter, make it simpler. Give people the safe version. Keep the real thought to yourself. At first, that compromise feels small, harmless even. But over time, it forces a person to live in two separate worlds: an inner world, where they think freely, and an outer world, where they present a simplified version of themselves so nobody feels uncomfortable. And after enough negative feedback, a belief begins to form. When I say what I really think, I get punished for it. And that's where the damage starts. Because when a deep thinker spends years having only surface-level conversations, they don't just become bored. Something deeper happens. Their mind begins to feel invisible. Because when you can't bring your authentic self into a conversation, that conversation stops nourishing you. It becomes interaction without connection. And eventually, 100 conversations without understanding can feel lonelier than complete solitude. But there's an even deeper cost, one that most people never notice. Intellectual growth begins to slow down because complex ideas don't grow in isolation. They grow through friction, through discussion, through exposure to other minds. A deep thinker without the right environment for exchanging ideas eventually runs out of places for those ideas to evolve. And before we go any further, this isn't about believing you're smarter than everyone else. It was never about that. This is about something much more human. The need to be understood, a need that isn't being met. So what can you do? First, stop pretending to enjoy superficiality just to gain acceptance. The approval you get from that performance often makes the loneliness even deeper. Second, find communities built around ideas, questions, curiosity, places where thinking is welcomed rather than tolerated. Because one genuine connection is worth more than 100 shallow ones. And third, this may be the most important lesson of all. You don't need to share your deepest thoughts everywhere. Wisdom isn't about revealing everything. It's about knowing where depth belongs and where it doesn't. So the next time you're in a social situation and feel like you're too much, pause and ask yourself one question. Am I actually wrong, or am I simply in the wrong room? Meet Sarah. Sarah is 28 years old, and she just got promoted. 3 years of hard work finally paid off. Her manager told her, "You're one of the most prepared and reliable people on this team." Her co-workers congratulated her. Her parents were proud, and Sarah smiled. She thanked everyone, acted as if she'd expected it all along. But that night, alone in her apartment, the very first thought that entered her mind was, one day, they're going to find out I don't actually know what I'm doing. Not happiness, not pride, just fear. Fear that this time, people would finally see the truth, or at least, the truth she believed about herself. Have you ever experienced that? Worked incredibly hard for something, achieved it, and still felt like you didn't deserve it? Like somehow you got there by accident. Like luck carried you across the finish line. There's a name for that feeling: imposter syndrome, and it's far more common than most people realize, especially among high achievers. So what's actually happening inside Sarah's mind? Imposter syndrome is a cognitive pattern, a pattern where people struggle to attribute their success to their own abilities. Instead, they credit luck, timing, circumstance, help from others, anything except themselves. And here's where things get interesting. You've probably heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect, the idea that people with lower competence often overestimate their abilities because they can't accurately recognize their limitations. But Sarah is experiencing the opposite. The more capable someone becomes, the more aware they become of what they don't know. Competent people understand how vast the world really is. They notice their flaws in microscopic detail. And the more they learn, the more clearly they see how much remains to be learned, which creates a strange paradox. The people who deserve success the most are often the ones most convinced they don't deserve it at all, and no external achievement, not a promotion, not an award, not recognition, can fully silence that fear, because every success gets deflected before it can sink in. I got lucky. The timing was right. Anyone could have done it. The achievement arrives and gets rejected before it ever reaches their core belief. According to neuroscience, when Sarah evaluates her own worth or competence, a network in the brain known as the default mode network becomes highly active. This network often pulls attention inward, into self-referential thinking, a loop of analyzing, questioning, and reanalyzing the self, without ever reaching a satisfying conclusion. But this pattern rarely appears overnight. Its roots usually go much deeper, often all the way back to childhood. A child learns that their value depends on performance. Mistakes trigger strong reactions. Comparison becomes normal. Overprotection prevents healthy failure, and eventually a message begins to form. If I fail, it means I'm not good enough. That belief quietly settles in. And years later, it's still there, waiting. So whenever a new opportunity appears, excitement isn't the first emotion Sarah feels. Doubt is. To cope with that anxiety, she usually chooses one of two paths. Either she delays the work completely, procrastination, or she over-prepares to an extreme degree, trying to hide the flaws she believes everyone else will eventually discover. Then the project succeeds. A brief moment of relief arrives, and immediately afterward, the cycle begins again. Because the credit never stays with her, it gets handed back to luck. Slowly, Sarah begins feeling uncomfortable with her own success. Feedback becomes frightening. Evaluation feels threatening. Every achievement creates tension instead of confidence. She consistently overestimates everyone around her, while underestimating herself. And the effort required to hide those feelings, to suppress them, creates even more pain, until eventually, it starts leading toward burnout. 6 months later, Sarah delivers a major presentation. It goes exceptionally well, and right on schedule, the familiar thought appears. I just got lucky. But this time, Sarah pauses. She opens a notebook and writes, "This happened because I prepared for it. I spent 3 weeks researching. I anticipated objections. I earned this outcome." And for the first time, the credit actually lands. The fear doesn't disappear overnight. But now it isn't the only voice in the room. There's another voice beside it, one that's telling the truth. If you want to break this pattern, the first step is recognizing it. When that feeling shows up, say it directly. This is imposter syndrome. This is not an accurate measure of my ability. Then deliberately trace success back to its source. Not luck, not coincidence. Identify the preparation, the decisions, the skills, the actions that actually produce the result. Separate your worth from any single outcome. Because you are bigger than your achievements. And perhaps most importantly, stop waiting until you feel completely ready. That feeling rarely comes first. Confidence is usually built after action, not before it. So, 3 faces. Alex, whose mind runs marathons through the night, not solving problems, just replaying them over and over until exhaustion feels normal. The person at the party, surrounded by people for hours, yet leaving with the feeling that nobody truly saw them, nobody truly heard them. And Sarah, who earned every success she achieved, yet still falls asleep, asking the same question. When will they figure out I don't belong here? 3 different people, 3 different struggles, but one thing connects all of them. None of them are weak. Alex overthinks because he genuinely sees more connections than most people. The person at the party feels lonely because their depth is real. Sarah experiences imposter syndrome because she understands how vast the world is and how much more there is to learn. These aren't flaws. They're often the cost of having a mind that notices more, feels more, questions more. But there's another truth. If these patterns go unrecognized, the very thing that makes you exceptional can slowly begin to consume you. So here's what you do. Like Alex, name the loop, recognize the wheel. Like the person at the party, find the right rooms. Stop compressing your depth just to fit in. And like Sarah, let the credit land. Just once. Fully. None of this changes overnight, but every transformation begins the same way. You notice the pattern, you give it a name, and you realize something important. This is not your identity. It's a loop, and loops can be broken.